we are going to delve into today's topic, how we can help people out there shift from this, and we have been a bit harsh, webinar, to a virtual event. And I know we can call these different things. So before we kick off, let's get your definition of this, because I know we've all got slightly different definitions. On one bucket, we've got a traditional presentation or a webinar. We've referred to it today. We're calling that the old school. And on the other side, we've got a more modern take on that, which we are calling a virtual event or a production, as you've called it as well, Mark, which is the new school. In your opinion, like, what's the differences between them two? Liam's just,
The easiest way that I could describe this is one is creating something that is recognizable. Yeah, which is our webinars, which is the stuff that many of us are used to. People join and then someone presents on a screen, but it's something that we've been used to in terms of screens that we see in front of them. There's less participation. There's very rarely any emotion. But when we talk about like things such as this, or creating live video for online, as they call it, as you said there, production, and this kind of thing of events on places like Zoom, and it all comes down to recreating what has already been done. So when you recreate what has already been done, you find little nuances that have never been done before. Maybe there are ways that engage with your audience more, or maybe there is. Listen, I've discovered last week, I think, called Mentimeter, and that's how you create live polling within occasions that you do as well. You're finding ways. So the difference is, one is something that we've been used to before. The other way is a means of raising interactivity, raising energy levels, and also using these spaces to our advantage. Is that all right?
Yeah, I mean, we obviously agree on this. When we first reached out to you, obviously we've been on You Are the Media as well, and there is a key differentiator between these two, and I think it is them building blocks. Like, how do you engage an audience? Like, what is the difference between someone sat there being force-fed a presentation slide by slide with the same monotone voice, the same pattern, never mixing it up, never going off the track, God forbid. And then there is a key difference between an organic conversation, something that takes its own route, and something that, you know, it doesn't have to be fancy. It's just got these essential building blocks, like introducing people, putting little sections in your event, making it an actual event, and putting these building blocks. You know, you don't go to a gig. This is how I think of, and the band just comes on, plays the exact same music like they do on their album, and then you go home. You know, you go and have a few drinks, you have a chat, you meet up with people. There might be a pre-show, there's an after show, there's different things that go on in between, and I think people just need to think about things like that.
Yeah, picking up here, Gareth, is that the big word, what you've talked about here, is how we find ways to engage with our audience, rather than just the simple things of reading off a script or a piece of paper in front of us. Is that because the great thing about where we've all been this year is, if we're delivering, if we're speaking on Zoom or any other live space, is that we're great at cutting corners. Cutting corners being that we have our piece of paper in there and no one can see us. But we do know if we are reading or if we are not finding a way that brings the audience or people in front of us closer to us. But on the other side, I understand it, because when we're presenting, this is the thing I'm trying to get over with myself. It's really difficult to read the room, and our own anxieties can get the better of us. Yeah. So like, it's silent, and it's just you talking into a camera, into your screen. And it's tough to know if someone's smiling or thinking of something, when the bad side of you is thinking that someone's on the other side and they're tweeting or they're just looking through their email. It's difficult. But on the other side, we're talking about here, it all comes down to the engagement we have with other people, and we can still sell. We can still say, oh, this is not just some altruistic world that we are a part of, but we've all had a really tough year. So why can't we raise the levels, emotion and everything else, and just make this is why I'm thinking as well. You talk here about productions, is that we start to think of what we're doing here, like what you're doing here with Fresh Fridays, as TV.
It's so true. Like, I think it's kind of like with our history of like being trainers, like we see so many people like just pull up a PowerPoint, start clicking through. There's no engagement. They follow the notes. As you said, they physically have their paper in front of them in the room. And it's just like, it's so bizarre. And you're right to think of it like, it's almost like having these sections. Like when we were on the lunch club yesterday, the section at the end, when you're all having your sing along, that's like that bit, that's that entertaining bit in that segment. And it's thinking of it like that rather than just this slide, this slide, this slide, see you later.
Can I pick up on that?
So much. Yeah.
Can I pick up on what you say there, Liam? And again, this is only from living in this live lab. Like what you've just done by asking questions, is that because we always hear this thing this year, this word that we never heard 12 months ago, this thing of Zoom fatigue, and it's very real. And I totally understand why it can become overawing, and we have had enough of it with speakers hiding away in the screen in a tiny place, or there is the tech that hampers the delivery as well. But I know that people are forgiving. But this means of finding ways to break things up. Listen, not just from my camp, but I'm seeing it with other people as well. So Alan Braithwaite, we're from Yellow Tuxedo. So what they do on their live stream is that they have a magician. Yeah, I love that. I love that. It's simple things that we can do to break up the flow. It just so happens. Listen, I'd love other people to do this stuff. Is that we have to find ways to break up the flow. For instance, there's a lady called Fleur Cook, and she introduces a section called winning towards the beginning. And winning was a way that during the first lockdown was that people would come on and share just the joy and fun they were having in their life in a pretty dark place. It could be having a decent haircut. It could be from the wife or husband or boyfriend, girlfriend, or it could be a daughter or son had learned to ride a bike. And there was these little distractions. And what we did as well was that we know it's been a gloomy year, so we sing at the end. And this way to break things up is when I talk about, it's like creating TV, guys, but I don't just say, hey, create TV, guys, it's brilliant. It's like, what have you done, Mike? You done bugger all. And I'm saying, well, yeah, I've tried to figure it out. Not all of it's worked. So we did singing at the beginning, but singing doesn't work. But it's like going to a pub and you've had a pint, but then when it comes to the end, you've had 4 or 5 beers and a bottle of wine, and everyone's up for the sing song. And we do that at the end of every lunch club. We're going to be doing Do They Know It's Christmas? Look, everyone's doing it first for the last one, our Christmas one in December.
I absolutely love it. And especially where you said earlier on, like your approach is this like human cannibal approach of like just trying these things, testing these things. Like when Gareth said to me, he's like, they do a sing song. I was like, no, they don't, do they? And I sat there and I was actually like, this is actually quite fun.
This is ridiculous. That's the thing, because it's ridiculous. And everything has a very serious point to it. And I know that a lot of people will be like, well, what am I walking into here? I mean, is he going to make us stand up and do some solo? But the reason it's so ridiculous that synchronized singing on Zoom is just, it's just so stupid. But it's this ability to let our guard down. Yeah, we can still be serious. We can still be professional. We can still get a point across. But at the same time, it's the humanity that brings us all together. And there's all these little quirks. And it's by understanding that we've all had a really torrid time. So why do you want to sit through another presentation that's looking at email, how to get good email headlines, how to use Facebook advertising? Because what we're doing as well, we've also commoditized the coronavirus. Companies are stepping forward as well. All they want to do is sell their wares. Yeah. And that becomes very off-putting for people as well. But you can still sell your wares if you put a different angle to it that invites interaction, that heightens the way of enjoyment, and that is a way that brings us all together. Because no one wants to be constantly doing this stuff because they're giving so much time. Because what happens is burnout. If you're just relentlessly doing stuff, and you're getting nowhere with it, it starts to tire you out. But if you find these means that strikes a chord with Seth Godin wrote a really good article 10, 11 years ago. It was called First 10. First 10, it was saying that you don't need loads and loads of people. There's a famous article called 1,000 Fans by Kevin Kelly. That's what we need, 1,000 people to step up. It was about the music industry, to buy our records, to buy the posters, turn up for gigs. But in 2011, I think it was, or maybe even before that, Seth Godin wrote First 10. And he's by saying, all we need are 10 people that are going to enjoy the work that we create and that we share, with the intention that they will tell other people, so they come on. That comes on board. So that whole thing of reach starts from having something that you believe in and having something that can strike that chord in somebody else.
It's so true, and I think there's so many references to that, about having this small, tight group of people, fans, who essentially will champion your business and make them, feel special, and they will return so much more. And it's all about giving to them people. You know what I mean? Like you can't just expect them 10 people to sprout out of nothing. You've got to nurture your community, you've got to build a following, and by doing so, they will see you through the tough times. It's so important that people and businesses realize that.